Begin the current Daf, Mesech Sotah Daf Lamadal. Begin on the top of the Amud. We're in the middle of a discussion regarding the Brisa that was telling us, Kitzat Over Yisrael Sayarden. How did the Jewish people cross the Jordan River in the days of Yeshua ben Nun? The reason why we're asking that is because they came into the discussion of the Mishnah about Har Grizim and Har Evel. Why did we get into the discussion of Har Grizim and Har Evel, which was when they crossed the Jordan? Because in the halacha of the Mishnah, we open up this parak, El Namora Mechaloshan and Elu Namora Melashna Kodesh. And one of the primary sources of a few things, or one that was Namora Melashna Kodesh, was the Levium, which was Bahar Grizim and Har Evel. Therefore, they got us into a parenthetical discussion regarding crossing the Jordan, which that was the psukim that helped us define Achrei Derech Mevaya Shemesh, Be'eva HaYarden, where it's going to be. And once we spoke about crossing the Jordan, so the Gemara quoted a brisa that went into detail about how did they actually cross the Jordan River. Today's daf. Some of the discussion in today's daf is, like we said, Kitzur of Yisrael Yarden, a brisa we started in the previous daf. The Goyven Shalmayim, the height of the Yarden's waters that accumulated after they retreated, meaning as they were passing by, so the water wasn't drowning them, how much was the height of the water? Also, regarding Oiden B'Yarden, when they were in the Jordan, so Amalam Yeshua, he said to them, Dua Matam Oiden Masiyarden. He was telling them, I want you to know why you're crossing the Jordan, which Taisa adds on a few things that even Arvis that they were warning them. Oiden B'Yarden, Amalam Yeshua, a few things, Harim Alechem Ish Eben Achas Al Shichmar Lemisper Shifti Yisrael, regarding the stones that they had to take out, and what did they do with those stones. And the Gemara, parenthetically, defines the weight of these stones, and then it gets into a conversation regarding the grapevines that the Meraglim brought from Eretz Yisrael, just showing you how much they were able to carry, and therefore, by default, how much was the weight of the grapevine. And then once we get into discussion of the Meraglim, because we're speaking about the weight of the stones, so then the Gemara gets into discussion regarding the Meraglim. The Meraglim in the Skabna Illa B'Yishas Shel Yisrael, the whole intent was to find the disgrace and the shame of Eretz Yisrael. So begin the current Daf, Daf Lamed Daled, the top line of the Amud. We started this price in the previous daf because we had mentioned, like we said, in the location of Har Grizim Har Evel, where the brachas, the clothes were recruited after the Yidden crossed the Yarden into Eretz Yisrael. So we had a price that says Ketzad of Yisrael Yarden. How did they cross the Jordan River? So we said the B'chol Yom every single day. Aron Noisei Achashnei Degalim, B'Levim Noisnes Aron. So they would be the Ma'achanes would be surrounding the Degalim would surround the Kalim, including the Aron, and that's how it normally traveled. However, this day when they crossed the Jordan, what happened was that actually the Kahanim were carrying it, it went in front, and the Machanis or the Galm were behind. And this was the words that we're up to now in the Gemara, on the top of Lamadal and Aleph, once the legs of the feet of the Kahanim dipped into the water, meaning on the eastern edge, when they're entering into the Jordan because they're crossing over to the west, over the water into Eretz Yisrael. So the water went backwards, meaning from where the Kahanim stepped in and lowered down, the water wasn't flowing down the stream. Rather, it was standing over there. But the water was continuously coming, so it kept on piling upwards. Like it says a pasuk in Yeshua. When they came, those who were carrying the Aron until the Jordan, etc., that the water stood there going upwards. It stood there like one column. And the column stood there until everyone passed by. And so they were basically preventing the water from going down, and it was going upwards. How high was the height of the water? So it's a machlokes. First opinion holds it was shnei masa mil al shnei masa mil. It was 12 mil squared, keneged machane Yisrael, which was the size of the Jewish people, which was 12 by 12 mil, and they went by kichanayasam. They went the way they were encamped, which was the width of the camp went along the width, which was 12 mil. Comes out that they didn't delay when they passed, just an amount of 12 mil, which is the length of the camp, until the last ones up the end of the machna. That's how much the height of the water was exactly the 12 mil squared. We'll get into more detail as the Gemara continues. That's the Rabbi Huda. Omalei Rabbi Laza, but Reb Shimon, he says, what are you talking about? L'dvarecha, according to your words, Adam kal or mayim kal? What's lighter? What's swifter? What's quicker? A person or water? Mayim kal. Obviously, water is quicker to run than a person. So imkain, if that's the case, that the water was only a height of 12 mil, and then it went back to its place, crashing down into the Jordan River, comes out that didn't give enough time to pass, and boy mayim b'shaytvanos, and the water is going to come and drown them. If that's how high the height, if that was the area of the water, a height of 12 by 12, there's not enough time for the 12 by 12 mil of people to walk by, because water runs faster. So if they were piling up and flying up 12 by 12, and then they came crashing down, then the people still would have been in the water. So Elam Alamid, rather, he says, he disagrees. The water was piling up, keeping arches on top of arches of water. Yeser mishalish meyes mil, more than 300 mil, which places finds that difficult. But until all the kings from east and west were able to see, because this was obviously very high, 300 mil. Like it says in Pasuk, that it was when all the kings of the Amori heard, that was over the Jordan Yama to the west, and all the Canaanite kings that were on the sea, Hashem dried up the waters of the Jordan, because the Jewish people had loved him until they passed by, and their hearts melted. They didn't have any spirit left in them because of the Jewish people. And also Rachab the harlot, Amr l'shluchei Yeshua, she said to the agents of Yeshua before they crossed the Jordan, so they sent spies, spy out, so Rachab was helping them, and she said to them, Kishamana, we heard is meaning they were still in terror from when Hashem split the Yamsuf. And now, after the Jordan, they were totally melted because this happened again right on their doorstep. So you see that, Uksiv, it says after that, V'nishma, we heard, V'yomas l'vein, our hearts melted, V'kama oid v'goymer, that you see that when Hashem does this with the water, that their hearts melt. Now, oidim b'yarden, when they were still in the Jordan, Amalem Yeshua, meaning in the river, Yeshua said to them, as it says there in the Pasuk in Sevi Yeshua, that it says that it says the Kahanim who were carrying the Aron, they stood in the Jordan, atam kol advarim. The Pasuk says this, until all the words were finished, Asher tiva Hashem es Yeshua ladaber la'am, that Hashem commanded Yeshua to tell to the people, and this is really what it says by Moshe Rabbeinu in Bamidbar. In Sefer Midbar it says, Hashem tells to Moshe that when you're going to cross the Jordan, you're going to chase out the Canaan. In other words, when you're going to cross the Jordan, then you're going to stipulate with them that that's the only way you're going to cross is if you're going to chase out the Canaanim. So that's what says the Gemara is what Yeshua told them. You should know. Why want to know why you're having the merit to pass the Jordan? On the condition that you chase out the inhabitants of the land in front of you. You're going to chase out all the inhabitants of the land in front of you. So essentially, Yeshua was telling them, if you do this, it's going to be good. If not, the water is going to come and flood oisichem, which would sound like it's the word eschem, you, but it's not. It says Gemara, my oisichem. What's this word, this interesting word, oisichem? So the Gemara is oisi ve'eschem. It's me and you. We're all going to die. Which actually Taisa brings that's one of the things that were said over there was actually this about arvis, taking responsibility. Kibbaleina es hanestachis, which is regarding the responsibility of what happens. And so that would make sense, would be oisi ve'eschem. Everyone's going to die. Now, Oidim Yarden, they were still in the Jordan. Yeshua said to them, ish. Let every person lift up a stone, which he was telling this to 12 people. Evan achas al shechme, one stone on his shoulder. Lemispech shivte b'nei Yisrael b'goyma, according to the number of the shvatim of the Jewish people, which these were the stones that they erected that were from beneath the station of where the legs of Kahanim were in the Yarden. Now, it says after that, that there should be a sign amongst you, Ki yishalin b'neichem mochalema, when your sons are going to ask you tomorrow, saying, what are these stones that you have? Similar bottom, it's a sign for the sons. That the fathers passed by the Jordan. That's a sign that they have these stones. Where's it from? It's from the bedrock of the Jordan River. Now, again, they were still in the Jordan. Yeshua said to them, lift up from here, from the Jordan, from the station of the legs of the Kahanim, these 12 stones, and pass it with you, and you should place it in the lodging that you're going to be lodging tonight. Which this is the stones that they erected by Har Evel, and they built an altar, and then they folded it up, and then they put it permanently by Gilgal. Now, you would think every lodging that they stayed, they should take these stones. That you're going to sleep that night, that was by Gilgal. That was where they put it. Now, and that's where it stayed. Now, Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, actually, Abba Chalafta, Rebbe Eliezer ben Masya, V'Chananya ben Chachinai, these three Talmidei Chachamim, Amdu al Eis Navanim, they stood on those Avanim by Gilgal. V'Shirim Kol Achas V'Achas, and they evaluated every single one of those stones. Shkula Karabam Sa, every stone was the equivalent of 40 Sa. Okay, so what does that teach us? So interesting, says the Gemara. We have a tradition that Tu'una Dimidli Inchi Likasve. This is very important for bodybuilders and weightlifters. That the amount that a person can lift up on his shoulder with no one assisting him is tilsa de tu'unehava, is a third of what he could hold if someone else loads him up. That's why they all have the guy who sets him. It's much different. You can carry that much more. And Taisa actually makes it even more of a chilik. Says there's a difference between lifting up, from the floor to the knees, to the shoulder. It's like a whole. Weightlifters know these things. How much can you pick up from where? So it comes out that if each stone to pick up was 40 sa, comes out that really each person in that generation was able to carry 120 sa, because what you could lift up yourself is 40 sa. That means to say, if someone's loading you up, then you could do 3 times that, which is 120 sa. So what's the significance of that? So now you can calculate the cluster, meaning how much weight was in the cluster of grapes that 8 men carried, and they were assisting each other when they lifted up on their shoulders. So that's going to be 3 times the amount one person would be able to lift up. Shlemek, says in Pasuk Mamidbar, it says Vayisu'uhu b'moed b'shnayim. It says that they carried with a stick with 2. Meaning there is talking about in Parashat Shlach by the Meraglim. It says they came to Nachal Eshkol, they cut from there a cluster. It says a branch and a cluster of grapes. And they carried that cluster of grapes, b'moed with a stick, b'shnayim with 2, and from the Rimonim and from the Te'enim. Now, says the Gemara, from the fact that it says with a moed, any dershe b'shnayim, which the simple understanding of the Gemara sounds like that, meaning if there's a stick, obviously you have 2 people, one on either side. So what are you saying with 2? Oh no, it means b'shnei moitos. It means with 2 sticks, which ends up being actually much more than that. It's really 2 sets of 2 sticks, which Amar B'Yitzchak, he says turtani, it's a load, v'turtani de turtani, and a load beneath a load, meaning. Seems to be Rashi's actually not like this picture exactly. The lower support the upper, meaning every single, when you're saying a load beneath a load, so you're going to have 2 different types of supports. Places brings other pshatim, but just for Rashi, that every load, so to speak, again, they were carrying 1 cluster, but they had 2 poles. How so? So if you look at first the ones that are going, the top ones, so they had 2 poles going parallel to each other. And you had 4 people carrying those the primary load, so to speak. Now, it seems like Rashi is not like the way this picture is. From Rashi, it would seem like it's actually an X. That then you have two. No, meaning to say, not parallel, not perpendicular, but actually a diagonal, like an X on the corners. This is perpendicular. This is well, it's an X if you tilt it, but I mean to say, I'm looking for a better word. The diagonal, meaning not. It would be diagonal means.
Single X and two more going.
These are parallel. These are parallel, and then you have those that crisscross, that are an X. Rashi's words are, says there's two other poles, and you have four people carrying them, and they are ba'alachsain, on a diagonal beneath the two upper ones, and one stick is one direction, and one stick is the other direction. The other and they go ba'alachsain. They're going on a diagonal. So either one.
This could be to go balachsan of the other two. Right.
But it's not ba'alachsain.
Only two went balachsan, not eight. Not four.
So Rabbi Yitzchak Rashi says it's not really coming from the pasuk. It's just that it was obvious to him that because what did they take? They took a rimoin and a te'ena. So that was obvious that was enough for two people because each one could carry one of those. Yeshua and Kalev, as the Gemara is going to discuss shortly, didn't carry anything. So there's 8 people left for the cluster. That's where the Gemara gets it from, because what the Cheshbon has to work out. The pasuk just says they carried a Riman, Te'ena, and a cluster. So that's where you get the 8. He says, if not for the first medrash that taught us that it wasn't one stick, we wouldn't know how to calculate 8 people to carry the cluster. Rather, obviously, that there were 2 poles, and Rabbi Yisrael come to tell us that there were 2 loads, and each one had 2 poles. So that's where you get 2 poles, for one load, so to speak. Really, it's all one cluster. And you have 4 carrying those 2 poles, and then you have another load, which is that same thing double, which is another 4 people, as the Gemara says, Haketzad. Shmoyne Naso Eshkol. You had 8 people carrying the cluster. Echad Nasarima, one carried the pomegranate. Echad Nasatena, one carried the fig. Yeshua v'Kalev lo Nasa Klum. They didn't carry anything. Why? So the Gemara has 2 pshatim. If you want to say Mishum Dechashiva, because they were distinguished. It's not Pakavadik, Rabbanim carrying these grapes. They weren't part of the council, the idea to bring these mundane, these bizarre, obviously very bizarre, right? I'm saying, you can imagine how much they weighed. That was the point of the Gemara, why we're segueing in from the avonim that they took from the Jordan River, which was segueing from the Halacha of our Mishnah, which talked about how Grizim HaEvon, that they crossed over the Jordan, and we're going now to the Meraglim, because we're saying that how big and how heavy these were. So the Meraglim had bad intentions. They wanted to say, just like their peiros are so mishuna, so outlandish, so too the dwellers are so mighty and so incredible that you can imagine, well, look at this, the grapes that they eat. Could you imagine the people that consume these grapes? So actually, going back to what we mentioned before, the Gemara just clarifies regarding what we spoke about, the water crossing over the Jordan itself. There's a machlekes amiram in that machlekes tanoim. Chadama one says Rabbi Yehuda, who said that the height of the water was only 12 mil by 12 mil, like the length of their machna, as you get into Medbeis, kichaniyas and avru. Like we said, that they passed by the way they were encamped. That's how they passed the Jordan, because the width of their camp went together. So therefore, the length of their passing was only going to be 12 mil by 12 mil, because that's exactly how they traveled over the Jordan. Now, but L'divrei Rabbi Elazar b'Reb Shimon, that he said that it was more than 300 mil in the height. B'zech hazavru. They went consecutive. They didn't go simultaneous. They went one behind the other. So That's why if you're going one person after another, it comes out that it obviously it's a long line to pass by, because if they went kechaniyasan, then because water travels faster than person, it doesn't have to make it so high. Like Tyson said, it must have been over the clouds, and like that. So the fact that it was 300 mil must be that they went one after the other. That's one Amoira's interpretation of the machlekes. Chadam, the other one says no, not true. Bein Mar or Bein Mar, according to either Tana, kechaniyas navu. They actually all went the way their camp was. So how do we understand the machlekes then? Was it 12 mil or 300 mil? So Mar Saba, Rabbi Huda held that Adam Kal, that actually a person is very quick to move, just like water. Now, Taisa says, what are you talking about? You can't say a person goes as fast as water. Taisa says, no, even though it's well known that water is faster, that's specifically when they're going down the way the water runs. But here, the water was piling upwards. So if that's the case, it's going against gravity and it's going upwards, then the measurement of the swiftness of water and the swiftness of a person is the same. And therefore, he holds that, yeah, that's why it was only the height of 12 mil by 12 mil, because it was the equal to the swiftness of a person. Whereas a Mar Savar, Rabbi Shimon held that no, Mayim Kalam, that water is still much quicker than a person, and therefore that's why it piled up to 300 mil. So we have this machlekes in the machlekes. Was there machlekes because they went b'kachanayasin or b'zeh? Or no, even if everyone holds kachanayasin avru, would we say that still water is so much faster and there's still going to be 300 mil, not 12 mil? Now, going back to the Meraglim that we just got into a conversation because we spoke about how big were the stones they carried, so we see how big, how heavy must have been a cluster of grapes that they were carrying, because again, each person, whatever he could carry, is tripled when he's having other people helping him, so you can imagine how heavy it was. So we get into a discussion regarding the Meraglim. The pasuk says in the beginning of the parasha there in Shlach and Bamidbar, Shlach l'cha anoshim, send for you men. So Amar Shlach says when Hashem was telling him, Shlach l'cha, send what's l'cha for you, it means midaitcha, means according to your understanding. Basically Hashem was saying, I'm not commanding you, but the Jewish people are telling you, like you're told me in the beginning of Sefer Devarim, like Kulchem. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Klal Yisrael when he's giving them Techacha, the beginning of Sefer Devarim, he says, you all ganged up on me. So basically, I'm not gonna stop you. Now, the reason why you have to darshan that Hashem was telling him Shlach L'cha Midaitcha was because V'chi Adam Zeh Boyer Chelik Ra La'atzma. You think a person would choose a bad portion for himself? In other words, as a mashal, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu was the one who commanded him to send Meraglim, would he tell him to do something that he knows at the end is going to bring to a takala, to a stumbling block? He knew Hashem what's going to happen. Hashem would never have commanded him to do something like that. Must have been that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted. He says, look, go ahead. You want to choose this? Shlach l'cha. Behind the says the passage in the Devarim that Moshe Rabbeinu says, and you guys all ganged up on me, and it made sense to me. Which Amar Shlakish, he says, yeah, be'enai, in my eyes, not in the eyes of the omnipresent of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Now, the pasuk before that says that v'yachperu lonu es haaretz, that people were saying, let them go ahead and spy out the land for us. Now, Amar B'chi Barabba, Meraglim, which Rashi translates actually as those who made the request for the sending of the Meraglim, the Yidden, Lo Niskabnu, their intent was not Ela l'bayshasa shel Eretz Yisrael. They wanted the shame of Eretz Yisrael. Because although the word v'yachperu means to check out, but it also has another interpretation. Ksevachet says they could check out for us the land. Ksevachem says over there, passing Yeshaya b'chafra lavana, that the lavana is embarrassed. Ubaisha chama, and the sun is shamed. You see, the word v'chafra also means the shame, the embarrassment, and that's what they wanted to do to Eretz Yisrael. Now the pasuk says in Bamidbar, ve'elish moisim, these were the names they were going to spy out. The Meraglim was Lamate Reuven, to the tribe of Reuben was Shamu ben Zakur, and it goes through it and it says all the 12 Meraglim. Now Amar Yitzchak, he says, this is for us a tradition in the hands of our fathers. Meraglim al shem asem dikro, the spies, their names were actually called based on their actions. But we don't really know how to darshan ele echad. Only one of them we were able to ascertain and define why he had that name. One of them was Sesur ben Michael. And says the Gemara, why was he called that? Sesur was Shesosser Meisav Shalakadosh Baruch Hu, because he refuted, he made like as if Hakadosh Baruch Hu was like lying, meaning really this was Zavas Cholav Advash. This is the great land that Hashem is bringing us to, where these ogres are going to eat us up. So that's Sesur. They was Seiser. He was demolishing. He was contradicting what Hashem had said. And Michael, which officially his father's name, was Sha'asa Atzmai Mach. He made, so to speak, Atzmai, meaning Hashem, Mach, weak. Like the Gemara says later on that they said, even the Balabayas can't get his stuff out of there. Basically to say, Bain Shalem brought in these Canaanim, you know, they're too big, they're too powerful. The Balabais can't get his kalim out to vacate for the next, so he can't evict them, these customers over there. So they so to speak made Rabbi Shloimy as a shvacha. So that's why he was called this name Sesor ben Michael. Right. But we always find that generally when we call someone based with the Tata's namen, that's why famously Yaakov says, don't mention my name. Mention the Tata of the Azayde Sezuk Kimfen the Zelbaboim. You know, so that's why the name of the father is also contributing to this characteristic. He says, he says, we also could say another drasha of another name. One of them is Nachbi ben Vafsi. Plus haste. Nachbi is Shehichvi, the word of Shal Kadosh Baruch Hu. That they concealed the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that they didn't say it as it is. They weren't being totally transparent and totally authentic in the way they were giving over this information. And also, Vafsi is Shepisa, that they skipped over Al Midaisav Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Again, that they didn't say it as it is. So they're Mizach gespringt a bissel, the Mizach behalten, gespringt, they were spinning. It's called spinsters. You know, they spinning the story the way they wanted to. Therefore, it was called Nachbi ben Vafsi. Now, the pasuk says in Bamidbar, Vayalu b'Negev, they went up from the south. Vayovay ad Chevron, they came till Chevron. It says, well, wait a second. Vayavoy miboyle, and they came. What's haste? It says Vayalu in the plural. That is the Meraglim. And it's Vayavoy. Erev could come. He came till Chevron. What do you should say they? Amarava Mrs. Malamed comes to teach her Shapirish Kolev Matzas Meraglim. Kolev separated himself from the council, from this plot of the Meraglim, of the spies. He goes and he prostrated himself, he bowed down on the caver of the Avis, which, that's interesting that places brings this idea that I thought the Gemara Bracha says that the Mesim don't know anything. And it sounds like even the Avis HaOlam don't know was tut sich da in der Welt. Was geht mit der Kivri Avis? Everyone goes. We get Kiristim, we get the Reb Nachman. Was geht mit to the Kivri Avis? They're basing garnished. They don't know what's happening in this world. So Tais is a very important yesod. Yeshloime dal yidei tefila shezem espal moedin lohen shekach nispal. That you're letting them know. They taka don't know. When you go to Kivri Avis, when you go to Kivri Tzadikim, you let them know was tutzach. And he says that's what the Gemara says in Tainus. Was lama yotzin lebeis hakvaras tishiv actually a mesim merachamim. And brings from Pirkei de Chasidim the Zabazacha obde mit Ramona the ishtatech am out davur gegangen to the Tate, and he's gebeten by the Kev and the Tate that they're bothering me. Was case the Tate knows? No, Tate weiß nicht. We get to the Kevarim, we get to the Kivri Tzadikim to let them know and daven, and then they know. Oh, Damals Poltman Dot and Shemayim. That's why we go to Kivri Tzadikim. So this was already in the times of Kalev. He went and he was in a difficult situation. He went to Kivri Avis. Amalan, he said to them, Avoisai, my father's big strulai rachamim. Beseech mercy for me, Shanatzal Matzaz Meraglim, that I should be saved from the plot of the Meraglim. Now, Yeshua, he didn't have to go. Why? Why was only him? I thought there was two tzaddikim, Yeshua and Kaleb. Why is it Lashon Yochid? Kvabikish Moshe Lavrachim. Moshe Rabbeinu already beseeched mercy for him. Shenem, like it says in the pasuk, V'yikra Moshe lo Hosheya bin Nun Yehoshua. He changed his name from Hosheya To Yahoshua, what does that mean? You could make that Yahoshua is Ka Yoshiacha. That's his name now, with the Yud K and the Shah. Ka Yoshiacha Matzas Meragim. Hashem should save you from the plot of the Meragim. Right? This is what it says in the pasuk over there. It says, "Va'avdi Kalev," and my servant Kalev, Ikev Ha'isur Ruach Acheres in my begoyim, because he had another spirit in him, etc. So the pasuk there says, "I'm going to bring him to the land that you're going to come there," which that's referring to Chevron, like the pasuk says in Sevi Yeshua. But Yitin is Chevron LaKalev. Chevron is given to Kalev, obviously because Kalev was the one who went to Chevron to Kibri Avos, and therefore he was Zeicha, and he got Chevron. Now, in classic Talmudic style, once we're talking about Chevron, because Kalev went there, because he went to Davin from the Tas Meraglim, so we talk about Chevron itself. So it says, V'sham over there in Chevron was Achimon, Sheishai, V'talmai, V'goyme, which the pasuk there is talking about. These were Yelidi Hanok. These were the children of the giants. And it says, so first of all, who were these giants? So the Gemara explains, Achimon, the first one is, he was called Achimon because he was Meyuman Sheba Achiv. It's like backwards, Ach Yuman. He was the right of the brothers, meaning he was the strongest of them, just like the right hand is more significant than the left one. So he was the rightest one, the strongest one of the brothers. The next one, Sheishai, was Shemeisim Esa'aretz Kishchasis, that he made the land like furrows, meaning the place of his leg made ditches in the ground because he was so heavy, boom, 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 walking. So it was recognizable like pits. Now, Rashi says the word Sheishai is not clear. How does that similar to the word Shchisais? So he says it would seem like the word Amudei Sheish, marble pillars. So the word Sheishai would be from Sheish, which are very heavy, and the place where you put them are very recognizable. You know, you have those heavy tables and you move it away, you see in the carpet, there's like a guma, there's like a big pit over there because they're heavy. So this was wherever he walked, he was like marble making ditches in the ground. And Talmai was Shemeisim as Aretz Tulamim, that he made the earth into also mounds of the furrows, which the earth goes up and because of the depth of the ground. That was these three brothers. They were obviously very big and fearsome. Dava Achar, which many Gersais take out the word Dava Achar, is not really another interpretation. It's just telling us that Achiman, this brother, Bana Anas, he built Anas. Sheisha Bana Alash, is just different towns they built, and Talmud Bana Talbush. Now it says there in the pasuk that they were Yelidei Hanak. They were the borns from the giants. So the Gemara makes it actually as a drasha that the word Ana could also mean a necklace. Shemanikim Chama B'Kemasan. That because of their great height, it was as if that their neck, as if it pierced and was in the hole that the sun comes out from. I'm not clear what that is exactly, but it appeared like as if the sun was a necklace around their neck. I mean, they made a hole through the sun. They were so tall, like as if there was a nice jewelry, golden jewel around their neck. That's how high they were. Now the end of that pasuk says that for Chevron, this is the main point what we're getting to because we're talking about Chevron here. Sheva shanim nivnasa. 7 years it was built, as the pasuk there concludes, Lifnei Tzoyin Mitzrayim, before Tzoyin of Egypt. It says, my nivnasa. So what does it mean that it was built 7 years? Ilem nivnasa mamash. Everything literally was built 7 years before Mitzrayim. Is it really possible that someone would build a house for the youngest son, for his younger son? Canaan was the youngest of the sons of Cham, and that's Chevron. Chevron's in Canaan, which is Eretz Yisrael. Mitzrayim was the second of the son. You think he's going to build 7 years before the Elster Bruder? He's going to build Kohen Lobnei Gadol? The Chsivit says the pasuk in Bereshis. It says the Bnei Cham, the sons of Cham, were Cush, Umitzrayim, Begoyme. So it talks about the sons over there, and then Ufut, and then Canaan. So Canaan, how could you build 7 years before Mitzrayim, who's an older brother? Ella, rather, no, it doesn't mean it was built. It means Mavuna. It was more well built. Al Achas Mishiva B'Tzayin, 7 times more than Tzayin, so which Rashi says it was more built with Peres, it was more fruitful. Now, says the Gemara, so there's nothing more rocky that doesn't make good fruits like moist land, the rockiest terrain, the least ideal for agriculture in Eretz Yisrael is Chevron, as we find the covered by Shichvi, where the Gemara is essentially trying to say that you should know that it's rocky and is not appropriate for agriculture like the rest of Eretz Yisrael, and that's why they designated for the burial of the dead. Now, there's no more ideal from all the lands, more than the land of Egypt. Like it says, the passing in Bereshis says that Lot, he went to Sodom, because Sodom was so luscious, Kigan Hashem, like the garden of Hashem, Ke'eretz Mitzrayim, like the land of Egypt. Now, and moreover, there's nothing more the preferred in the land of Egypt, more than Tzayin. So like it says the passing in Yeshaya, it says, Kihayu b'Tzayin Sarav, because in Tzayin were the ministers of the Jewish kings who were sent to the Pharaoh to help him regarding his fight with the king of Assyria. So obviously Paroi, the Pharaoh, was in Tzayin, and that's where they went to seek him. And even so, and still Chevron, which is the least of Eretz Yisrael, was 7 times more than Tzayin, which is the greatest of Eretz Yisrael, which is the greatest of all the world. So you see the shvach of Eretz Yisrael. The Gemara says, really? Really? Chevron was rocky? Well, it says a pasuk in Shmuel Beis. It says, it was the end of 40 years. And Avshalom said to the king, I'm going to go now, as Rashi brings in the Divrei Maschil, the rest of the pasuk, I'm going to make up my neder, as the Bach adds in the words, that I took a neder for Hashem and Chevron. So he says, I'm going to go now to Chevron, I'm going to pay up my neder that I had taken in Gosher, which it says after that, because ki neder neder avdecha b'shivti b'Gosher. Now the question is, what was he doing in Chevron? That's not where there was a Mizbeach. Mizbeach wasn't given. So why was he saying, I want to pay up my neder, make a carbon, and go to Chevron? Some say it was Rabbi Babachan, and said, oh no, because he went to first get the Shepsela, he went to get the lamb from Chevron, because Tanya will learn in Abraisa Mesechtes Menachos that says, Elim, if you want to get the best rams, that you bring Mimoyev. Kevasim, you want to bring the best lambs, Michevron. Oh, so obviously it's a land with good grazing, with good pasture. So to shepherd over there, so obviously there is a good land over there. Says the Gemara, no, mina. From there, in other words, from your response, you actually helped me that no, it was not a significant land to plant like the rest of Eretz Yisrael from the fact that it was rocky, because to the contrary, I did the Klisha Ara, since the earth over there was actually rocky, so it's very thin and weak and very little, and because of that, they didn't plow, they didn't plant any grain, any crops of human food. So of the raya, to the contrary, that's why they actually made for pasture, because it just sprouts and has grass all over, and that's what the sheep are eating. Bisham and kinyana. And therefore, the flock of the sheep got fatty, because that's the way of the sheep, that they actually, it's better for them dry, rocky land, which you just have these grass growing everywhere, more than the moist land, and therefore that is, like we said, that it was the rockiest, and therefore that is the shvach of Eretz Yisrael, that we see Chevron, which is the lowest, is still 7 times greater than the best of Eretz Yisrael. Thank you to any time.